Okay, so now we're going to go do multiplying and dividing by powers of 10 more advanced. So let's look at the following problems. Let's see. Try to zoom into this and get my pen out. Okay, so here we have 0.4 times 10. Now we know that for here we have 1 0, so we're going to move the decimal place over 1, right? So the other way of looking at that is if we move this decimal, 10.0 basically, to the left, then we're going to move this one to the right, right? Because we know that when you multiply it by 10, we have 1 0. We're going to make this 0.4 into a 4. It's going to add 10, it's going to become 4, right? So we move this decimal over 1 to the left, and then we move this one over 1 to the right, okay? If this number becomes smaller by a power of 10, this number is going to become larger by a power of 10, okay? So let's try that on the next one. We have 0.4 times 20. So here we're going to move this decimal over to the left one. We're going to get rid of this 0. And we're going to move this decimal over to the right. And so now we have 4 times 2, which equals 8. Okay, so 0.4 times 20 is 8. Next we have, let's change colors, 0. Okay, we have 0.03 times 300. Now, if we take the 300 number, we can get rid of these two zeros. We can move this decimal to the left, 2. And we can move this decimal. We have to move this, whatever we do to this right number, we move that one to the left 2, then that means you have to move this decimal over to the right 2. This one moved to the left 2, this one moves to the right 2. Okay, so that means that this number here becomes a 3, and this number here becomes a 3. So it's 3 times 3, which equals 9. Okay, now here we have 50 times 60. We don't need to move any decimals. There's no decimals here. So here when you have bigger numbers, what you do is you look at your zeros. Here you have 1 0, 2 zeros. So we write those zeros down. Then we look at 5 times 6. 5 times 6 is 30. So 50 times 60 is 3,000. Okay, let's do another one. Switch colors again. Here we have 120 times 200. Here we have 1, 2, 3 zeros. So let's write those zeros first. 1, 2, 3. Now we have what's left is this 12 and this 2. So 12 times 2 is 24. 24,000. Okay. Next, last but not least, on the multiplication, we have 0.020 times 500. So here we have a decimal. So we look at the right number. We can put a decimal at the end, and we're going to move that decimal. We know we're going to need this to move this one over to the right 2, 1, 2. And we know we can move this one over to the left 2, 1, 2. So that means this number becomes a 2, and this number is a 5. 2 times 5 is 10. So this is helping you with just general good math principles. Okay, let's see. Now we're going to go to some division problems. So here we have 40 divided by 10. Hopefully you know 40 divided by 10 is 4. But if you want to know how to do that mathematically as we get more complex, here you're dividing. So if you had 40 divided by 10, it's different than multiplying. Multiplying, you're making one number smaller, one number bigger. Here, you're taking the top 0, you get rid of both those zeros. Okay? Let me erase this. So here, then that becomes 4 over 1, which is 4. Just like if you had 10 over 10, these numbers cancel. You can cancel zeros in division problems. Okay? 40 divided by 1, that's 40, okay? 40 divided by 0.1, okay? Now notice up here, let's go back to this problem, okay? When we look at this problem, another way of doing it other than crossing off the zeros is you can look at this and you can say, okay, I moved this decimal over one, and I'm doing the same thing to the bottom number. I moved both those decimal places over, which got rid of those two zeros, okay? Now on this one, we go down to our 40 divided by 0.1. A lot of people don't feel comfortable multiplying or dividing with decimals, so we want to get rid of this decimal. So if we move this decimal over to the right one, then we do the same thing to the numerator. We move this decimal over to the right. So that would become 400 divided by 1, which is 400. Okay? So when you're multiplying, you're moving one number, one decimal to the right and one decimal to the left to even it out. But in dividing, because they're one's on top of the other, you're dividing, you're actually moving the decimals the same direction. Okay, so now here, 40 divided by 20, you can either just cross off both that, or you can move the decimal over on both of those, and you have 4 divided by 2, which is 2. Okay, oopsie. Trying to move the whole, there we go. Alrighty, so now we have 40 divided by 0.02. Here we want to get rid of the decimal. We want to move this decimal over 2. 1, 2 to the right. So then we're going to do the same thing at the top. 1, 2 on the top. So that's going to make that 4,000 on the top. And on the bottom, it's going to be 2. So 4,000 divided by 2, we know that this 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that's going to be 2,000. Okay. And next one, we're going to move this decimal over to the right, and we're going to move this decimal over to the right. So now you have 6 divided by 2, oopsie, 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Okay, and I think this is the last problem here. Yep, last but not least, we have, okay, so here we want to get rid of the decimal, so we're going to move this decimal place over to the right one, and we have to do the same thing on the bottom, move this over 1. So now we have 8 divided by 200. Okay, so this isn't going to turn out, this is going to end up being a decimal, but that's just again showing you how you can move the decimals around to make it a simpler problem. Okay, we can also simplify this because we know that both 8 and 200 are divisible by 2. You divide 8 by 2 and you get 4. You divide 200 by 2 and you get 100. So that's going to be 4 divided by 100. What do you know about 4 divided by 100? That's 400ths, right? So that's going to be 0.04, 4 hundredths. Okay?